special meaning. And it's not basically about abortion, about whether that's right or that's wrong. But to me, it's a matter of a life or death issue. I'm basically just going to kind of tell you a little bit about how I came about and why I feel like I'm here. In high school, my parents met each other and fell in love. At that time, the Vietnam War was going on, and we were pretty involved in it at the time. My dad's father, my grandfather, was also very ill at that time. So instead of finishing high school, my dad decided to drop out of school to go to work. Well, when he dropped out of school to go to work, to help pay for medical bills and help my grandmother out, because that's who he lived with. They were his primary caregivers, his grandparents. So he felt like it was his responsibility to help take care of them. So he dropped out of school, went to get a job. Well, he was over 18 at the time. So Uncle Sam decided, well, we think it's more important for you to serve your country than to take care of your family. So, being the good American boy that he was, he went on in for the draft and was sent to Vietnam. Wasn't there actually before he went to Vietnam, my mom and dad, of course, you know, were very in love, so they just, most teenagers at the time can't live with each other, had to be with each other, so they spent some time together before he left. And after he got over there in country, my mom found out she was pregnant with me. He was there just a few months and was trying to get papers to come home so they could get married and, you know, do the right thing. And before he was able to get those papers completed and make it to Vietnam, he was actually killed in an operation that they had. They went out on a maneuver. And most of the guys in his unit died that day along with himself. So anyway, after that happened, my mom wasn't but about 16 then. She was close to being 17, but not quite. And at that time, you know, back in the 60s, the best thing for a young girl at that time was to have that taken care of. Well, luckily for me, at that time, abortion was not quite yet legal. They were in the talks about it, but it was not legal at the time. So my grandparents had a brother that lived down in New Orleans and was going to Tulane University. And they had a home for unwed mothers down there. But see, the problem at the time was my grandfather was the mayor of the little town they lived in, and you know, you couldn't take that embarrassment of a teenage daughter being pregnant. So they would try to find ways to kind of put her away just until the issue could be resolved. So they decided to send her down to New Orleans, where the home for unwed mothers was. It was a Baptist home down there. It was in existence until just a few years back. So they helped and took care of girls for quite a few years. And so anyway, she came down here. Of course, she was actually down here before my dad was actually killed. And she said that my grandmother showed up one day, and she knew when she got there that he was gone. So anyway, she knew at that point she was going to be, you know, alone doing this, which she was kind of alone already because she was down there in the home, you know, with other girls. So anyway, she wanted to keep me, but at the time it was basically her parents' decision. So they told her, this is what's best for the baby, this is what's best for you, we're going to do this. So there was a couple in Denham Springs that had tried and tried for years to have a child and never could. So God calls that couple to find out about the agency and to start getting involved and all. And after I was born, they were told about me, and they were happy and was thinking that this would be, you know, something good for them as well as for me. So basically, my life had been spared, and in 1969, I became a new person and went to a new family. A few years later, my mom's sister, which was a couple years younger than her, became pregnant as well. The story was very different for her. At that time, this was the early 70s, and abortion had become legal. And at that time, my grandparents thought the best thing to do was take care of the situation again. At this time, my aunt was sent to an abortion clinic, and the pregnancy was terminated. understand more fully, about life and about how precious and how special it is. Because within our family, we have the adoption and the abortion. God blessed me, though, when I was 28 years old, and I was able to find my birth mom. And it was a healing process for both of us, because I always wondered, why I was given up. And was I loved? Was I wanted? And she always felt like I would never forgive her for giving her away. So we both were able to kind of help each other heal. So now I knew at that time where I came from, who made me, and who my parents were. And I also found out about my dad and how he served his country, and he died as a hero. I met my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, and cousins. And I also found out that my mother was able to have more children. Because you see, after she gave me away, it was 9 years before she was able to have another child. So she thought that she had given the only child away she would ever have. But God still blessed her anyway and gave her 2 more girls and a boy. So I have 2 sisters and a baby brother. So God is really good. And He will take a bad situation and try to make it better. And try to heal us if we'll just give ourselves to Him and let Him take care of us. On the other hand, every year, my aunt still cries for that child that she should have had almost 40 years ago. She says that it will always hurt, but with God's help, she's been able to make it through, and He's been able to comfort her. And she was blessed as well. God gave her 3 more children also. She had a daughter and 2 more sons. So to me, I thought it's pretty cool. Mr. Bobby would say the numbers, the number 3, just being a good number. So I believe that I'm a miracle from God. He not only saved my life, but He spared my life. I always want to live worthy of that. I'm thankful for it, and I'm happy to be the woman that I am today. And thankful for those godly parents that He gave me. Because they raised me in a Christian home. They took me to church. They taught me what was right and wrong. And taught me to be the type of person that I am today. Things could have been so different for me. That life or that death. So I feel like, I was close to both of those. But God had a different plan, a different purpose for me. And a different, plan for what I was going to be and who I was going to become. Because if I would have, not been adopted, then I wouldn't, be who I am today. And for a long time, I wondered about that and felt bad about that, but my pastor kind of helped me because I felt like that for me to be who I am, that my dad had to die. But that's not true. It's just how it happened. But God took a bad situation, him dying, and then me still being able to live. So my hope for you today is that with my testimony, you'll see and realize that life is a true gift from God. That we never know when our last breath will be. So live every day to the fullest. To be exactly what God would have you to be. To be all that you can. If you see that person on the side of the road that's broke down, stop and help them. If you see that person that's crying or hungry, give them something to eat. Because we have to be that light for them. Because, God to me feels like that God did the ultimate thing by sending His Son here. And His Son came with the purpose of dying for us. And I feel like if God gave me life, I should be doing what He would want me to do. Because if you think about it, I really shouldn't be here today. So anyway, I just, sorry to get so emotional, but it's just so close to my heart about what God did for me. One little small person, but He stepped in and He saved my life years ago, and I'm so thankful. So I just pray that you think about those young girls that are going through some of the same stuff. Nowadays, abortion is here, and it's available, very available. And some girls, they just think that's my only way out, but it's not. So just please pray for them, that God will put somebody in their life. I was so thankful to work a few years for the Family Resource Clinic there in Livingston Parish, and y'all, they are amazing.
verse 26 it says, "Then God said, let us make man in our image and according to our likeness." God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, creating mankind in His image. Why are we so valuable to God? Because He gave us life and He created us to be like Him in His image. Life is precious. I'd like us to take just a moment to think of the story that Kelly just shared with us and about some of the different players that were involved. In the first scenario with Kelly's family, there were some, first of all, the laws were, abortion was illegal at the time. That played a part in her grandparents' decision about her life. Secondly, there was an aunt and uncle who were willing to allow Kelly to come into their home in New Orleans. So she moved in with them for a little while, and then from there moved out of their home and into the home for unwed mothers there in New Orleans. There was a hospital, Baptist Memorial Hospital in New Orleans, that was willing to work with that home for unwed mothers to provide a place for them to have those babies at no cost to them, to save those babies' lives. Then there was an organization who sponsored and helped young couples who couldn't have children or for whatever reason chose to adopt to be able to find those children and take them into their homes. So the law was on her side, making abortion illegal. An aunt and uncle were willing to step up and say, hey, don't go to one of the abortion mills and do it illegally. Send her to us. And she went to their home. There was the home for unwed mothers, there was the hospital, and there were families willing to take in children to adopt. All those things God used to spare my wife, to give her to me today. On the other hand, just 3 or 4 years later, the law had changed. There was nobody there who spoke up and said, let her come and be with us. And the outcome was very different. Now, I'm not trying to judge or condemn the grandparents or the moms in this situation. With all that was going on around them and those who were giving them advice in those situations, taking those scenarios and advising them or being willing to open their homes, there was no one there to open their home for Kathy when she needed a place to go, Kelly's aunt. And she suffers still today. Can God bring healing to her? Absolutely. Folks, I want us to know that also. There are a lot of people out there, a lot of young ladies, and there's some men who know that they have children that they didn't father, or that they fathered but didn't raise. Folks, there's help out there and there's forgiveness in Jesus Christ. That must be our number one message to those who have already made the mistake, have crossed that line and snuffed out that life. They too can find forgiveness. But folks, what is better, forgiveness or obedience? Malachi tells us, I don't want your sacrifices for forgiveness. I want your obedience, is what God tells us. What is best is obedience, that we honor and hold precious life, just as God considers our lives to be precious and holy. We too need to be like the aunt in New Orleans, who says, it's inconvenient, but let her come and stay with me. How often today I hear the term, when it's referring to folks who are considering abortion, the biggest indicator or the biggest obstacle to life for most of those young ladies and most of the young men who are involved in those pregnancies and their parents or grandparents, the biggest deciding factor is how convenient or inconvenient will this life be to me. Folks, we need to step up. As our friend Rodney, and I wish Rodney were here today. Y'all know Rodney does the P-Rose and such. Fathered a child outside of wedlock. Acknowledged the fact that was sin. Asked God for forgiveness. But then did not compound one sin on top of another. He went to the mother who was considering abortion. Is that true? Kelly was working at the clinic when she came in. Begged her, you will have no financial responsibility for this baby. I'll never hold you accountable for it. I will take and raise this child if you will just let her live. If you'll give her to me, you'll never have to worry about any inconvenience past the day that she's born. I'll take care of her. And now is raising this precious little girl that we see and sometimes gives me more amens than others around here. So,
Amen.
thank you. But he was willing to say, she's not an inconvenience. She's my child. She's not an inconvenience. She's a precious life. A precious gift from God. Folks, we as the church of the living God, in the first century were known as the people who rescued babies from the trash heaps because they had now come to a place of acknowledging the sanctity of life. They literally went around, and when poor folks felt like they couldn't raise another child, they couldn't feed another mouth, they would take the baby and wrap them up and take them down to the trash heaps and leave them there for the animals to die. And the Christian church at that time would go and make rounds every morning and rescue those babies. Make sure that they had an opportunity to live. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know. We're going to close with this little video clip in just a moment. But we say all this today to say life is precious. If you are one of those who has been part of an abortion at some time in your past, there is healing. There is forgiveness in Jesus Christ. If you have an opportunity to influence a young man or a young woman who's going through making a decision about the life of an unborn child, be a hero to that child. Speak up for life. Even if it means being inconvenienced. After all, isn't life worth more than just a few moments of